Laricina Energy Limited of Calgary points out in a presentation Strategies for Cheaper Bitumen, the rate of oil recovery is a function of the time averaged reservoir temperature, and the optimal recovery temperature is in the range of 150 degrees centigrade. As they note, the trade-off between this lower temperature and the 200 to 250 degrees centigrade typically used in the SAGD process is the speed of recovery of the bitumen, not the amount of oil produced. Even at 150 degrees, the cost of steam per barrel is roughly $12 as opposed to $15 to $18 typically. The nuclear-assisted hydrocarbon production method would zero out this energy cost and produce bitumen without producing an ounce of CO2, in the absence of all but in situ water. The surface temperature of nuclear waste ranges from between 250 to 350 degrees centigrade and is sufficient to gradually raise the temperature of bitumen in situ into the 150 degree range necessary for recovery. Production would be further enhanced by introducing a low boiling point fluid adjacent to the heat source that would disperse the heat into the formation, in the same way steam does currently. Preferably, this low boiling point fluid would also have solvent or dilutant properties, as would be the case with hexane. Placing spent fuel in a deep oil sands formation to foster production would provide a massive economic benefit to Alberta, which is the best way to address the NIMBY factor associated with high-level waste. This is also one of the few ways Alberta can produce its resource in compliance with Section 526 of the U.S. Energy Independence and Security Act. So what are the ethics of this proposition? First, nuclear waste is a major problem made all the more evident by recent events in Japan. Solving this problem is an environmental quid pro quo Alberta can easily afford, in fact would profit from, for the environmental damage the oil sands have and are expected to cause. And the concept of nuclear waste in Alberta is not unprecedented. One Alberta town has offered to look into accepting a repository for Canada's waste, and nuclear power has also been considered as a power source for producing the oil sands. Such reactors would cost billions of dollars each and would produce their own waste, which Alberta would have to deal with. Nuclear waste has also for decades been a major impediment to the sale of CANDU reactors, in which all Canadians have invested billions. Nuclear waste on traditional First Nations land is also not a new concept. Some bands have pursued this approach for decades, and some still are. The notion of importing nuclear materials into Canada also does not come out of the blue. In 1996, Canadian Foreign Minister of Affairs Lloyd Axbury was quoted in the Globe and Mail as stating, "There's a lot of hot stuff out there. Canada might be able to help because of the country's vast experience in waste management and disposal." Ed Wyke, a socio-economic consultant for the Federal Environmental Assessment Review Office, in a submission on the Atomic Energy of Canada Limited disposal concept, stated, "Canada may find itself in the enviable position of being able to safely get rid of nuclear waste. Perhaps for the sake of decreasing the hazards from such waste to the rest of the world, and therefore ultimately to itself, Canada might consider going into the business of importing nuclear fuel waste from other countries." At the 1996 G8 Moscow Summit on Nuclear Safety and Security, Prime Minister Chrétien agreed in principle to consider using U.S. and Russian weapons-grade plutonium as fuel in Canadian reactors. The rationale was Canada is committed to and strongly advocates world nuclear disarmament. Eliminating the risk of theft and proliferation posed by plutonium from nuclear weapons helps mankind to reach this goal. Other countries view Canada as a safe and responsible country that can act as a respected third party in converting both Russian and U.S. weapons-grade plutonium.